You've heard the rumors, the theories, and the whispers in the dark. But every great mystery has a final door that demands to be opened. We've traced the crown, we've followed the shadows, and now we stand at the threshold of the truth. After 500 years of silence, the evidence is finally catching up to the past. This isn't just about who sat on the throne, it's about who paid the price for it. It's time to confront the final, chilling reality of what happened inside those stone walls. If you are watching this right now, I want to ask you something. What really happened? Because every case you are about to hear has one thing in common. The investigation was closed. The file was sealed. And the truth was never found. These are the cases that detectives couldn't solve, that witnesses couldn't explain, and that official records couldn't account for. If you are someone who needs to know what really happened, you are in the right place. Subscribe to Unsolved Vault and join thousands of investigators uncovering the case's history left unfinished. Welcome back. This is Unsolved Vault. And today, we open a case that was never meant to stay closed. In the summer of 1483, Richard III stood before England as its newly crowned king. Westminster Abbey hosted ceremonies filled with banners, noble families, and church officials dressed in rich fabrics. Royal seals carried his authority across the kingdom, and proclamations announced the beginning of a new reign. Castles, courts, and councils adjusted to the change with practiced formality. From the outside, the machinery of kingship appeared secure. Richard occupied the throne with confidence, surrounded by supporters determined to present stability after months of uncertainty and political upheaval. Those who attended the ceremonies experienced a mixture of celebration and unease. Trumpets echoed through halls, candles burned before altars, and crowds gathered to witness traditions that had shaped England for generations. Yet beneath the music and prayers, quieter conversations traveled between nobles and foreign observers. Some voices praised the new king's experience and determination. Others spoke with caution, careful not to reveal too much. Even during moments meant to inspire unity, questions lingered beneath the surface. Hope and suspicion shared the same spaces, creating an atmosphere difficult to define. As the first months of Richard's reign unfolded, attention gradually shifted beyond coronation rituals. Royal progresses carried the king across England as he sought support from cities and noble houses. New appointments strengthened his government, and official business moved forward with purpose. Yet whispers concerning the missing princes refused to disappear. No proclamation silenced them, and no public appearance brought reassurance. Instead, doubts followed Richard from one place to another. Small uncertainties slowly attached themselves to larger questions, turning private concerns into shadows that stretched across the kingdom. For historians, this chapter reveals how power and suspicion often travel together. Richard III ruled with authority recognized by law and ceremony, yet legitimacy depends upon more than crowns and documents. People seek confidence as much as obedience. Looking back, it becomes clear that the greatest challenge facing the new king did not come from armies alone. It came from unanswered questions that could not be commanded into silence. A throne might elevate a ruler above others, but it cannot always lift him beyond the reach of doubt. Richard III approached kingship with the confidence of a man who believed order could be restored through strong government. Following his coronation in July 1483, he worked quickly to establish authority across the realm. Councils resumed their duties, royal judges traveled the countryside, and officials received instructions intended to strengthen administration. Richard rewarded loyal supporters and sought to demonstrate that his reign would bring justice and stability. He understood that England had endured decades of conflict, and he presented himself as a ruler capable of preventing the return of old divisions. His efforts extended beyond London. Royal progresses carried him and Queen and Neville through towns and cities where local leaders welcomed the new king with ceremonies and gifts. Richard listened to petitions, confirmed privileges, and attempted to build personal relationships with communities throughout England. Records from his reign reveal concern for legal reform and fair government. Many people who encountered him directly described a ruler committed to his responsibilities. These impressions complicate later portrayals and remind historians that Richard's reign cannot be reduced to a single question, no matter how powerful that question eventually became. Yet the shadow of the missing princes followed him everywhere. It appeared not in official documents, but in conversations that refused to disappear. Foreign ambassadors continued reporting uncertainty. Noble families quietly exchanged rumors. Even among those loyal to Richard, there remained an awareness that two boys once stood closer to the throne than the man now wearing the crown. No matter how efficiently government functioned, those absent figures lingered in the background. Their silence carried weight because it invited endless speculation. Every accomplishment of the new king existed alongside questions that no one could answer with confidence. Political unrest soon transformed those questions into a serious threat. In October 1483, rebellion spread across parts of England. Some rebels rallied around Henry Tudor, while others invoked the memory of Edward IV and his children. The uprisings revealed that doubts concerning Richard's legitimacy had become entwined with wider dissatisfaction. Although the rebellion failed, the danger it exposed remained real. Richard survived the crisis, but suspicion proved more difficult to defeat than armed resistance. A battle might end with victory or defeat. Rumors, however, rarely disappear so easily. They linger in private thoughts and quiet conversations, shaping reputations in ways no army can control. As Richard III settled into his reign, he faced a challenge that could not be solved through law or ceremony. Across England and beyond, people searched for explanations regarding the missing princes. Some hoped the boys had been moved for their protection. Others feared a darker answer. Richard himself never publicly addressed the matter in a way that satisfied his critics. That silence became one of the most debated aspects of his reign. Historians continue asking why a king accused by rumor chose not to present clear evidence or visible reassurance to calm growing suspicions. Foreign courts watched developments with interest. France, Burgundy, and other European powers relied on ambassadors who gathered information through conversations and reports. Their letters reveal uncertainty rather than certainty. Diplomats encountered stories that changed from one source to another. Some noblemen defended Richard and insisted that his enemies spread lies to weaken his position. Others quietly hinted that terrible events had taken place inside the tower. Because evidence remained scarce, foreign rulers received conflicting impressions. England appeared stable on the surface, yet beneath that appearance lay questions that even experienced observers struggled to understand. Meanwhile, Richard worked to strengthen his dynasty. He invested hope in his only legitimate son, Edward of Middleham, who was created Prince of Wales. The young prince represented the future of the new royal line and offered a sense of continuity. But tragedy arrived unexpectedly when Edward died in 1484. The loss deeply affected Richard and Queen and Neville. Beyond personal grief, it created fresh uncertainty about succession. Once again, questions about heirs and legitimacy returned to the center of English politics. The kingdom seemed unable to escape the issues that had haunted it since Edward IV's death. Looking back, there is something striking about the contrast between Richard's visible actions and the invisible burden he carried. He governed, traveled, judged disputes, and attempted to secure loyalty across the realm. Yet every achievement unfolded beneath unanswered questions that never completely disappeared. People often remember kings through victories and laws. Richard's reign became different. It became tied to absence. Two unseen figures remained present in the imagination of the kingdom, and their silence shaped the reputation of the man seated upon the throne. In many ways, Richard ruled not only over England, but also beneath the long shadow cast by uncertainty. By the final years of his reign, Richard III found himself confronting dangers that reached beyond ordinary politics. Henry Tudor, living in exile across the Channel, had emerged as a serious rival. Supporters dissatisfied with Richard's rule gradually gathered around the Tudor cause. For many of them, the mystery surrounding the princes strengthened their opposition. Whether they believed the boys were dead or merely hidden, uncertainty itself weakened confidence in the king. Questions that had once spread through whispers now influenced alliances, marriages, and loyalties. The shadows surrounding the throne had become part of the political landscape. Richard responded with determination. He strengthened defenses, rewarded faithful supporters, and maintained royal authority wherever possible. Despite the rumors surrounding him, he continued governing with energy. His progress through England demonstrated a king who understood the importance of personal presence. Yet circumstances became increasingly difficult. The death of Queen and Neville in 1485 brought another personal loss, and speculation soon followed even that tragedy. Enemies and critics interpreted events through suspicion, while supporters struggled to defend a ruler whose reputation had become entangled with mysteries no one could fully explain. The conflict reached its conclusion in August 1485 at Bosworth Field. There, Richard III met Henry Tudor in battle and became the last English king to die fighting for his crown. His death marked the end of the Plantagenet dynasty and the beginning of Tudor rule. Henry VII quickly established his authority and united rival houses through marriage. Yet the passing of Richard did not bring clarity regarding the princes. Instead, the mystery survived the man most closely associated with it. The questions that followed him during life remained alive after his death, refusing to disappear with the fallen king. Centuries later, historians continue debating Richard III with unusual intensity. Some view him as an able ruler destroyed by political enemies and later propaganda. Others believe suspicions surrounding the princes cannot be ignored. What makes his story remarkable is the absence of certainty. Few rulers inspire such sharply divided opinions. Richard's throne, his victories, and even his defeat at Bosworth became inseparable from the unanswered fate of two boys who had vanished years earlier. In the end, his reign became defined not solely by what he achieved, but by questions that history never managed to silence. But if Richard was the king, who were the men waiting in the shadows to exploit his crown? The mystery was about to spill across borders. Years after the princes vanished from public view, Europe witnessed the appearance of unfamiliar faces claiming royal blood. Courts in Burgundy, Ireland, and other regions became gathering places for exiles, nobles, and ambitious men searching for opportunity. Letters crossed seas, alliances formed in private chambers, and rumors traveled alongside merchants and diplomats. Portraits, seals, and ceremonies were used to support remarkable claims. The absence of the princes had created empty spaces within the line of succession, and others stepped forward hoping to occupy those spaces for themselves. People experienced these developments through stories carried across borders. Sailors arriving from foreign ports spoke of hidden heirs and secret survivals. Noble households listened to reports read aloud by trusted clerks. The sounds of banquets and political meetings mixed with whispered speculation about boys thought lost years before. Hope and doubt often appeared together. Some listeners wanted to believe that one of the princes had escaped. Others sensed manipulation behind the stories. Yet curiosity proved difficult to resist. because the mystery surrounding the missing children had never truly disappeared. As the Tudor dynasty strengthened its rule, new claimants began attracting supporters. Names once unknown gained importance through carefully crafted narratives. Men who possessed no obvious connection to the royal family suddenly found themselves treated like princes by powerful allies. Their stories evolved with each new alliance and each political crisis. Foreign rulers sometimes encouraged these claims, seeing advantage in England's uncertainty. What began as unanswered questions slowly transformed into tools used by rivals seeking influence and legitimacy beyond their own borders. Looking back, it becomes clear that mysteries rarely remain empty for long. Human beings search for endings, and when history fails to provide them, others often create their own. The missing princes became more than absent children. They became symbols powerful enough to inspire loyalty, rebellion, and deception. Their silence invited strangers to speak in their place. In that strange way, the disappearance inside the tower continued shaping politics long after the original events had faded into memory, proving that unanswered questions can become weapons as dangerous as armies. After Henry VII secured the throne in 1485, England entered a new political landscape, but the mystery of the princes remained unresolved. That uncertainty created opportunities for rivals who understood the power of royal blood. The first major challenge appeared in the figure of Lambert Simnel, a boy presented as Edward, Earl of Warwick, another Yorkist claimant. Although Simnel never claimed to be one of the missing princes, his story revealed how easily supporters of the old dynasty could gather around a carefully constructed identity. Powerful nobles and foreign allies recognized that symbols often mattered as much as facts. A far more intriguing figure emerged several years later. A young man named Perkin Warbeck claimed to be Richard, Duke of York, the younger of the two princes believed lost inside the tower. According to his story, he had escaped death and spent years living in secrecy before revealing his identity. The claim attracted remarkable support. Margaret of Burgundy, sister of Edward IV and aunt of the missing boys, publicly recognized Warbeck as her nephew. Kings and princes across Europe welcomed him with honors usually reserved for royalty. His appearance transformed old rumors into a direct threat against the Tudor crown. For many people, Warbeck's claim touched something deeper than politics. The disappearance of the princes had left emotional wounds that had never fully healed. Some Yorkists genuinely hoped that one of the boys had survived. Others viewed Warbeck simply as a useful instrument against Henry VII. Foreign rulers found strategic value in supporting a claimant who could destabilize England. Whether people believed his story completely or merely found it convenient mattered less than the fact that his claim possessed power. The mystery surrounding the tower had created a space where hope and ambition could easily join forces. Henry VII understood the danger. He worked patiently to expose Warbeck and undermine his supporters. Interrogations, confessions, and careful diplomacy gradually weakened the pretender's position. Yet the episode demonstrated something remarkable. More than a decade after the princes vanished, uncertainty still carried enormous political weight. Men were willing to risk fortunes and lives for stories that might not be true. The absence of clear answers had given extraordinary strength to imagination. In a kingdom shaped by questions, even a stranger with the right story could command armies and challenge a king. Perkin Warbeck spent years moving between European courts, and each new alliance strengthened the strange possibility that history itself might have made a mistake. In Burgundy, Scotland, and parts of Ireland, influential figures treated him with remarkable seriousness. King James IV of Scotland welcomed him warmly and even arranged a marriage between Warbeck and Lady Catherine Gordon, a woman of noble blood. Such gestures gave his story an appearance of legitimacy. To observers watching from England, These developments raised uncomfortable questions. Why would powerful rulers invest so much in a man if his claim carried no value at all? Yet support for Warbeck often reflected politics more than belief. European rulers understood that an uncertain succession could weaken England and strengthen their own positions. The mystery of the princes offered a convenient opening. Whether Warbeck truly was Richard, Duke of York, mattered less than the instability his claim created. Supporters supplied money, ships, and soldiers because his existence troubled the Tudor monarchy. The fate of two missing children had become part of international diplomacy. A mystery born within the walls of the Tower had traveled far beyond London and entered the calculations of kings. Eventually, Warbeck's fortunes began to collapse. Attempts to invade England failed, and expected uprisings never gathered enough strength. Henry VII captured him and treated him with surprising caution at first. The king recognized that executing a man claiming royal blood could create sympathy rather than fear. For a time, Warbeck lived under supervision, allowed limited freedom while his story slowly unraveled. Later confessions and failed escape attempts sealed his fate. In 1499, he was executed at Tyburn. His death ended one challenge to the Tudor dynasty, but it failed to answer the larger mystery that had made his rise possible. Looking back, the story of Perkin Warbeck reveals how powerful uncertainty can become. A vanished prince left behind no voice to confirm or deny his identity. Into that silence stepped a man whose origins remain debated even today. Some historians dismiss him as an impostor. Others wonder whether certain details surrounding his life deserve closer attention. Regardless of the truth, his story demonstrates something remarkable. The disappearance of the princes created possibilities that survived generations. Long after the Tower had grown quiet, the missing boys continued shaping destinies through the hopes, fears, and ambitions of people who had never known them. By the beginning of the 16th century, the great pretenders had disappeared, but the political legacy of the missing princes endured. Henry VII had defeated rivals and secured the Tudor dynasty, yet the memory of Edward V and his brother continued lingering beneath official history. Their names no longer inspired armies, but they still occupied an unusual place in the imagination of England. Chroniclers, nobles, and ordinary people carried different versions of the story into a new century. No decree could erase the mystery completely, because unanswered questions rarely surrender to authority. As years passed, writers began shaping the narrative according to the needs of their own age. Under Tudor rule, accounts increasingly emphasized Richard III as the villain responsible for the disappearance. These stories supported the legitimacy of the new dynasty by portraying its predecessor as a tyrant whose fall had been necessary. Later historians and dramatists would strengthen that image even further. Yet other voices survived beneath the dominant narrative. Some questioned the evidence. Others wondered whether different enemies or hidden circumstances played a role. Competing explanations continued to exist, though not all enjoyed equal influence. What makes this chapter so remarkable is the transformation of two children into symbols used by people with very different goals. Foreign rulers saw opportunities. Rebels sought banners around which to gather supporters. Kings defended their legitimacy through carefully shaped histories. Writers and chroniclers turned uncertainty into powerful stories. In each case, the princes themselves remained silent. Their absence allowed others to define their meaning. That silence became a kind of political territory, occupied again and again by those seeking power, influence, or historical justification. Centuries later, the mystery still carries that strange quality. The princes are remembered not only because they vanished, but because so many people tried to speak on their behalf. Rivals, pretenders, kings, and historians all stepped into the space left behind by two missing boys. Their lives became tools in struggles they never chose. And perhaps that is one of the most unsettling aspects of the story. The fate of children lost inside the tower did not end with disappearance. Instead, their memory traveled through courts and battlefields, changing shape with each generation while the truth itself remained hidden behind the silence that started it all. The political games were one thing, but the earth itself was holding a secret. In 1674, the stone finally began to speak. Nearly 2 centuries after the princes vanished, workmen inside the Tower of London made an unexpected discovery. In 1674, while dismantling part of the old White Tower, they uncovered a wooden chest hidden beneath a staircase. Inside lay the skeletal remains of 2 small bodies. The location itself carried unsettling significance. Stone walls that had witnessed royal ceremonies and political secrets now revealed something that seemed connected to a mystery people had never forgotten. The bones were removed and examined, though the science of the time offered few answers beyond speculation. Those who encountered the discovery experienced it through whispers and reports rather than certainty. News spread through London with a mixture of curiosity and unease. The smell of dust and old stone filled the work area where laborers had uncovered the remains. Scholars and officials discussed possibilities while memories of the missing princes resurfaced once again. There was no dramatic announcement declaring the mystery solved. Instead, conversations unfolded cautiously, shaped by old stories passed down through generations. The discovery stirred emotions because it seemed to bring the past unexpectedly close. As interest grew, King Charles II ordered that the bones receive respectful treatment. They were placed inside an urn and eventually buried in Westminster Abbey. Yet the burial brought new questions rather than final answers. Historians and antiquarians began debating whether the remains truly belonged to Edward V and his brother. Over time, improvements in science encouraged fresh investigations, and each generation returned to the same puzzle with new methods and renewed hope. What had been hidden beneath stone steps gradually became the center of another chapter in the mystery. Looking back, there is something haunting about the discovery itself. For centuries, the princes had existed as names surrounded by rumor and silence. Suddenly, there appeared to be physical evidence resting beneath the very place linked to their disappearance. But evidence without certainty can create fresh mysteries instead of ending old ones. The bones beneath the stairs seemed to promise answers, yet they also reminded historians that the past often reveals itself in fragments. Sometimes those fragments illuminate history. Sometimes they deepen the shadows surrounding it. The discovery made in 1674 occurred during renovations ordered under the reign of King Charles II. Workers removing part of a staircase near the White Tower encountered a wooden box buried beneath layers of stone and rubble. Inside were the remains of 2 young individuals. Even in the 17th century, people immediately connected the finding with the long-remembered story of Edward V and Richard, Duke of York. The location seemed too significant to ignore. Although nearly 200 years had passed, memories of the missing princes still lingered within English history, waiting for anything that might explain their fate. King Charles II ordered the bones transferred to Westminster Abbey, where they were placed inside a marble urn designed by Sir Christopher Wren. There they rested among kings and queens, treated with the dignity expected of royal children. Yet respect and certainty were not the same. The decision reflected belief rather than proof. Scholars and writers accepted the identification largely because it matched popular tradition. Few scientific tools existed to challenge or confirm those assumptions. The remains entered history wrapped in symbolism, but the mystery itself remained untouched beneath the surface. Interest revived centuries later when advances in medicine and forensic science offered new possibilities. In 1933, permission was granted to examine the contents of the urn. Experts studied the bones and concluded that they likely belonged to two children close in age to the missing princes. Some injuries and irregularities attracted attention, though nothing provided a clear answer regarding identity or cause of death. The examination produced valuable observations, but limitations in technology prevented definitive conclusions. Instead of solving the mystery, the investigation revealed how difficult it could be to extract certainty from centuries-old remains. What made the 1933 study especially frustrating was the number of unanswered questions it exposed. Some bones appeared incomplete, and evidence suggested that the remains might have been disturbed long before their discovery. Scholars disagreed over details, and later researchers criticized aspects of the examination itself. New methods such as DNA analysis promised additional insights, but access to the bones became a sensitive issue involving royal authority and ethical concerns. Once again, the mystery resisted easy solutions. The remains beneath the stairs had offered hope, yet every attempt to understand them seemed to uncover deeper layers of uncertainty rather than clear truth. As forensic science advanced during the 20th and 21st centuries, historians and researchers began asking whether modern technology could finally answer questions that had survived for more than 500 years. DNA analysis had transformed countless historical investigations, identifying long-lost individuals and clarifying ancient mysteries. Naturally, attention returned to the bones resting inside Westminster Abbey. Some scholars believed that genetic testing might reveal whether the remains truly belonged to Edward V and his younger brother. Others hoped that scientific methods could determine age, ancestry, and perhaps even clues about how the children had died. Yet science soon encountered barriers beyond the laboratory. The remains belonged to a royal burial, and permission for further examination rested with royal authorities and the Dean of Westminster. Questions of ethics also entered the debate. Some argued that disturbing the bones again would show disrespect toward children who had already become symbols of tragedy. Others insisted that uncovering the truth would honor their memory rather than violate it. Historians, scientists, and members of the public found themselves divided. The mystery that had once belonged to medieval politics had evolved into a modern discussion about science, responsibility, and the treatment of the dead. Adding to the uncertainty were discoveries made elsewhere within the tower. During the 19th century, additional skeletal remains were uncovered in St. George's Chapel and other locations connected to the fortress. These findings introduced even more possibilities. If multiple sets of remains existed, how could anyone be certain which belonged to the princes? Some researchers questioned whether the bones placed in Westminster Abbey represented the children at all. Others suggested that evidence from centuries of rebuilding and disturbance inside the tower complicated every assumption. Physical clues existed, but they refused to arrange themselves into a simple story. Looking back, it becomes clear that the mystery had entered a new age. Earlier generations relied on rumors and chronicles. Modern investigators turned to laboratories and forensic evidence. Yet despite dramatic advances in science, certainty remained distant. Bones, measurements, and historical records all offered pieces of information, but none supplied a final answer. In some ways, the discovery beneath the stairs created a second mystery alongside the first. Historians no longer asked only what happened to the princes. They also asked whether the remains hidden beneath stone for centuries truly belonged to the boys whose disappearance had haunted England for generations. Today, the small marble urn inside Westminster Abbey continues to attract quiet attention from visitors who pass among the tombs of kings and queens. Most people walk by without realizing that the remains inside may belong to two children whose fate changed English history. Historians, archaeologists, and forensic specialists still debate whether another examination should take place. Some believe modern DNA techniques could provide answers unavailable to earlier generations. Others argue that expectations may exceed what damaged and incomplete remains can realistically reveal. Even in the age of advanced science, uncertainty remains a powerful presence. The debate itself reveals how deeply the mystery has become woven into public memory. Researchers examine old documents, compare family lineages, and study every surviving clue with remarkable care. Supporters of Richard III often seek evidence that might challenge long-accepted assumptions. Other scholars focus on the possibility that the bones belong to the princes and represent the only physical trace left behind. Each new theory attracts interest, discussion, and criticism. What began with a wooden chest beneath a staircase has grown into an international conversation involving historians, geneticists, and royal authorities. Perhaps the most striking aspect of the discovery is that it transformed an invisible mystery into something tangible. Before 1674, people argued over stories and rumors. After the bones were found, they confronted the possibility that the past had left behind physical evidence hidden in stone. Yet physical evidence carries its own problems. Objects do not speak, and bones cannot explain who placed them beneath the stairs or why. They offer clues, but not confessions. In that silence, historians continue searching for meaning while confronting the limits of what history can preserve. More than 5 centuries after Edward V and his brother vanished, the mystery remains suspended between history and science. The bones beneath the stairs seemed to promise certainty, but certainty proved elusive. Instead, they reopened questions that many believed had been buried forever. Generations of scholars have approached the remains hoping to uncover a secret hidden within them. Yet the deeper they look, the more they encounter the same shadow that surrounded the princes from the beginning. A silence that reveals just enough to inspire hope, but never enough to bring the story to an unquestioned end. We have seen the bones, the politics, and the centuries of debate. But one question remains. How do we reconcile the history books with the silence of the tower? Today, the mystery of the princes in the tower survives in archives, libraries, and ancient buildings that have outlived everyone connected to the events of 1483. Historians study faded letters, royal records, and forgotten accounts preserved across England and Europe. The Tower of London still rises above the Thames, while Westminster Abbey guards the small urn linked to the story. Museums display portraits of Richard III, Edward IV, and the missing boys. Physical traces remain scattered across different places, forming a landscape where history and unanswered questions continue to meet. Modern researchers experience the mystery through fragile manuscripts, digital databases, and careful examinations of surviving evidence. Pages centuries old release the faint scent of dust and aging paper as scholars compare handwriting and dates. Conversations unfold inside universities and historical societies where theories are tested and challenged. Some researchers focus on documents, while others place hope in science and genealogy. There is excitement in discovery, but also caution. Every clue seems to carry possibilities and limitations at the same time, making certainty difficult to grasp. Over the years, interpretations have shifted as new evidence and fresh perspectives emerged. Historians once accepted certain explanations without question, but later generations re-examined assumptions that had stood for centuries. Richard III himself has undergone a remarkable transformation in public memory, and debates surrounding his role continue. Advances in technology have encouraged renewed interest, while documentaries, books, and investigations have introduced the mystery to new audiences. With each generation, old theories are reconsidered and forgotten details receive unexpected attention. The search itself continues to evolve even when answers remain hidden. Perhaps that is why this story refuses to fade. It offers no final confession and no undisputed conclusion. Instead, it leaves behind silence filled with possibilities. Two boys vanished more than 500 years ago, yet their absence still invites questions from people who will never know them. History often rewards patience with answers, but some mysteries seem to resist closure. The Princes in the Tower belong to that rare group of stories where uncertainty itself becomes part of the legacy, ensuring that curiosity survives long after evidence has grown quiet. Modern investigations into the fate of the princes rarely begin with dramatic discoveries. Instead, they unfold inside archives and reading rooms where historians examine documents that have survived wars, fires, and centuries of neglect. A single letter, a forgotten account, or an overlooked reference in a foreign chronicle can inspire fresh debate. Researchers compare testimonies written decades apart, searching for contradictions and hidden connections. Sometimes the smallest detail attracts attention. A date that does not align, a phrase copied from an earlier source, or a witness whose loyalties remain uncertain can reopen questions thought settled. One of the greatest challenges facing historians is the quality of the surviving evidence. Much of what is known comes from writers who recorded events long after they occurred. Thomas More, writing decades later, described the deaths of the princes in vivid detail, yet he relied on information gathered after the fact. William Shakespeare later transformed Richard III into a memorable villain, strengthening an image that shaped public imagination for centuries. Modern scholars approach these sources with caution. They recognize that memory, politics, and literary ambition can influence how stories are preserved and retold. As older assumptions have been questioned, new theories have emerged. Some historians believe Richard III ordered the deaths to secure his throne. Others suggest that Henry VII or powerful nobles may have benefited from the prince's disappearance. A few researchers continue exploring the possibility that one or both boys survived longer than traditionally believed. Each theory relies on fragments rather than complete evidence. None provides answers accepted by everyone. That uncertainty has created a strange balance. Historians disagree sharply on details, yet they share the same frustration. The most important pieces of evidence may have disappeared centuries ago. What makes the mystery remarkable is its refusal to obey expectations. Most historical puzzles gradually narrow toward consensus as evidence accumulates. The princes in the tower have followed a different path. New research often creates additional questions instead of reducing them. Every clue seems to illuminate one corner while casting shadows across another. Scholars continue their work not because they expect certainty tomorrow, but because the search itself reveals something valuable about power, memory, and the fragile nature of historical truth. Sometimes understanding history means accepting that the past preserves mysteries alongside facts, and that both deserve careful attention. Beyond universities and archives, the mystery of the princes has entered popular culture in ways few medieval stories have managed. Books, television programs, documentaries, and historical societies continue introducing new audiences to the unanswered questions surrounding Edward V and his brother. Some people encounter the story through Shakespeare. Others discover it through modern biographies, podcasts, or debates surrounding Richard III. With each generation, interest returns in a different form. The details may change, but the fascination remains remarkably strong. More than 5 centuries after the disappearance, the princes continue attracting attention from people separated by language, geography, and time. The rediscovery of Richard III remains in 2012 added fresh energy to old discussions. Archaeologists uncovered the king beneath a parking lot in Leicester, and scientific analysis confirmed his identity. For many researchers, the discovery served as a reminder that history still contains surprises. If Richard himself could be found after centuries of uncertainty, perhaps other mysteries might also yield unexpected answers. Supporters of the king hoped renewed interest would encourage further examination of evidence connected to the princes. Critics remained cautious, emphasizing that identifying Richard's skeleton solved one mystery without answering another. Debates surrounding DNA analysis and the bones in Westminster Abbey continue attracting attention. Some historians argue that modern techniques could clarify questions that earlier generations could not address. Others warn that expectations may exceed the limits of available evidence. Royal authorities have shown little desire to disturb the remains, and ethical concerns complicate every proposal. As a result, the mystery occupies an unusual position. Technology appears capable of remarkable achievements, yet access to the most important evidence remains uncertain. Once again, hope and frustration stand side by side, much as they have throughout the story. Perhaps that balance explains why the mystery continues to inspire curiosity. Human beings are naturally drawn toward unanswered questions. We seek endings because endings provide comfort and meaning. The princes in the tower offer neither certainty nor closure. Instead, they leave behind possibilities that refuse to disappear. Historians continue debating, writers continue imagining, and ordinary readers continue wondering what truly happened inside the tower. The silence surrounding the boys has endured for more than 5 centuries, yet it remains strangely alive. In some ways, the mystery survives because no generation has been willing to stop asking questions. In the end, the story of the princes in the tower remains remarkable not because of what historians know, but because of what they cannot prove. Edward V and his younger brother entered history as children expected to inherit a kingdom. They disappeared into uncertainty and left behind no final letters, no reliable witnesses, and no confession capable of ending centuries of debate. Around that silence, generations built theories, accusations, and hopes. Yet despite the efforts of scholars and scientists, the truth itself remains hidden somewhere beyond the reach of surviving evidence. Every age has approached the mystery in its own way. Tudor writers framed it through politics and morality. Victorian historians searched for order and certainty. Modern researchers rely on forensic science, archives, and digital records. Each generation believed it stood closer to the answer than the one before. And yet the mystery endured. New discoveries illuminated forgotten corners, but they also revealed how much had been lost. Fires, wars, destroyed documents, and the passage of time left gaps that no amount of determination could completely overcome. History preserved fragments, but the center of the story remained strangely empty. Perhaps that emptiness explains why the fate of the princes feels so deeply human. The mystery is not only about kings and succession. It is about 2 children whose lives became entangled in struggles far beyond their understanding. It is about memory and the limits of evidence. It is about how people respond when certainty disappears. Some search for villains. Others search for redemption. Still others accept that certain questions may never receive complete answers. In every case, the mystery invites reflection on the fragile line between what happened and what history is able to remember. As evening shadows settle across the Tower of London and visitors pass beneath ancient stone walls, the same questions linger in quiet corners of history. Were the princes murdered? Did someone else profit from their disappearance? Could forgotten evidence still exist, waiting to be found? No voice from the past rises to answer. Only silence remains, carrying with it the weight of more than 500 years. And perhaps that is why the story refuses to fade. Some secrets disappear with time. Others become part of history itself, waiting patiently while generation after generation returns to ask the same haunting question. What really happened to them? The mystery of the princes in the tower remains one of history's most profound scars. We have walked the path from the coronation to the grave, yet the fog of 1483 never truly lifts. Perhaps the princes don't need us to solve their mystery. Maybe their true legacy isn't the identity of their killer, but the way they force us to question the nature of power, truth, and the voices that disappear into the dark. The tower still stands, the Thames still flows, and the question remains: what does it mean to be remembered when everything else is forgotten?